Welcome everyone to an exciting episode. We've got season 2 of Commerce Corner from Lula Commerce. We're diving into episode 2 today, and we've got a very exciting conversation lined up for you. We're joined today by Matt Van Gilder, who is the VP of Omnichannel Commerce at NexChapter. Welcome to the podcast today, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And today I'm joined again by the host of today's podcast, Adit Gupta, who is the co-founder and CEO of Lula Commerce. So welcome, Adit, and the floor is yours, sir.
Hello. So great to be here. Matt, thank you. It's been a while since we've really dug in, so I've been excited about this conversation. I want to start with a bit about your background. You've had experience in other verticals tangential to convenience outside of the space, but tell us about kind of where you started in retail and how did you make your way into convenience?
Sure. I like to say I was born into retail. I had the unique opportunity to be brought up in a family that ran a business in grocery. We actually had a regional chain of supermarkets on the east side of Michigan. My uncle started the company back in the 60s and then brought my dad and other uncles into it. So eventually a lot of the younger generations became involved in the company as it grew, and you didn't really have a choice when it came to your first job. You started bagging groceries at one of our stores, which was a great way to learn the core of retail and, kind of cut your teeth on what it means to provide great customer service. So, of course, I did that in high school to earn gas money. And when I went off to college, I said, hey, this is great, but I'm going to be different. I'm not going to do the family thing, and I'm not going to go into grocery. But I guess while I'm in college, I can become a cashier at the local supermarket because that's what I know. And it turns out I ended up loving it. I never got out. And that's because it was a great opportunity to just embed myself into what's really a fun operation in what has become such a core part of the community. Supermarkets do a lot. As we'll talk about later, convenience also plays a huge, important role within the community. But really what drew me in was getting to work with the people, the customers, and the associates. And, one thing led to another. And I ended up spending 20 years working in stores or supporting stores at a retailer, doing a number of things from, working in every department in the store to managing stores and moving into corporate marketing across all of our stores within the organization. And then eventually e-commerce, including curbside pickup and delivery, mobile apps, micro fulfillment, all the fun stuff that came with that through COVID. So got to learn a ton. So I've had a stint in grocery for some time now, and then have recently moved over to NexChapter, where I can take a lot of that experience that I've gained over the last 20 years and help other retailers accomplish a lot of those things that I got to work on. Take some of the experience I've got and some of the things I've learned. Not everything worked over the 20 years, and help apply that to some of the projects some other retailers are working on and help them accelerate and compete in what is now the digital age.
Love that. I think it's rare that you sort of are born into an industry and stay in it. And, from our past conversations, it's evident how much you care about the end, not only the folks in the store working, but the end shopper. That's just evident to me in every single conversation that we have. I want to talk about NexChapter in a bit. Tell me a little bit more about sort of the most obvious differences you've experienced as you compare new home, which is convenience, to past home, which is grocery.
Yeah. So, I'll kind of contrast your question with what are the similarities to begin with. And I had the opportunity for the last, 10 years when I was at a retailer to work with convenience, but it was sort of on the periphery. And I don't think my leadership would have appreciated me saying this at the time, but it was kind of a side hustle. I maybe felt that way for the organization as well. I think convenience was originally developed within our supermarket footprint to help drive traffic to the store. Similar to why grocers bring pharmacies into the mix, right? It's another angle they can use to drive traffic in, and it becomes something they can also leverage for the rewards program. But I really do think that the organization I worked for in the last several years did start to see like the true unique value and opportunity that the convenience, the 30 plus stores they had for them, and really started purposely investing in that operation and looked at it as something that's not just to serve the supermarket, but could really be valuable and profitable and stand on its own. And I think they were totally right to shift in that direction because the convenience space is awesome, full of super loyal customers that come in every day, sometimes several times a day, and super dedicated operators. And like I said, the similarities between convenience and grocery are just that, right? They're a core part of the community, helping people's lives every day. I think that while there are many parallels, some of the big differences aren't really that the end goal is so much different. It's just more where convenience and grocery are on their acceleration path and their maturity. And what I've been seeing as I've been getting closer to some of the convenience operators and seeing where they're at is it seems like the biggest difference is just that the convenience, especially when it comes to digital maturity and developing those platforms, is just maybe 5 to 10 years behind where grocery was. And I think that really is a result of the influence COVID had on both the industries. And it influenced them both significantly. But I think it forced the grocers' hands a little bit more when it came to figuring out digital shopping and curbside pickup and delivery a lot more quickly than it did the convenience operators. So that in a really short amount of time forced all the grocers to stumble, trip, fall, figure things out super quickly, bend over backwards to make things work in that time of need. Um, and that pushed everybody like 5 years ahead of where they would have been otherwise. So I think that's one of the biggest differences. There's a lot of other parallels. I think it's maybe one thing you could point out is like, hey, food service is a big opportunity in convenience, but I also see that as something in grocery that's happening as well. And where that might actually be the inverse, where convenience is leading a bit more than grocery is. But that's another parallel that isn't really so different if you take a look at it. But really, the thing that excites me the most about what the similarities are and that difference at the same time is that I can, again, take a lot of the things that I learned over the last couple of years when we were forced to accelerate quickly, build things quickly, and figure out, okay, what are the right moves to make? What shortcuts do work? What shortcuts don't work? What aren't really worth your time? And be able to help those convenient operators as they continue to catch up and accelerate and get to where the grocers are in the next few years.
Yeah, it's so much data. I mean, it sounds like COVID was a really good catalyst for the acceleration in grocery, and uh, we have now seen that sort of also come to fruition in convenience through more food service, as you've just mentioned. The proof is really in the numbers. I'd say more than 15, 20%. I'd say in 2026, I'd even say over 25% of grocers are now digital. They have digital experiences, but it's still sparse in the convenience world. Why do you think that is? I mean, outside of this acceleration from COVID, what's your hypothesis on why convenience still isn't truly digitized nationwide?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. I think the convenience operators are maybe hesitant to fully invest and lean in because they're not sure that customer base is there yet. And I think at the same time, the customers are hesitant to test because they aren't sure that the operators are ready yet, right? So it's a little bit of hesitancy on both sides, and both are waiting for somebody to go first. And I think in this case, um, the retailers that do move first and are willing to take the lead and drive the change and take that risk are the ones that will benefit the long term. But it is a risk, right? You're taking a risk on building a platform and promoting the business, which takes a lot of resources. And I think promoting the business is a really important thing to key in on there because it is certainly not a if you build it, they will come situation. You have to get buy-in from your customers, of course, in the way you promote it, but also internally. And not just the frontline associates that are executing it. That is very important, but also just across the organization, you need to get buy-in because doing digital commerce right really takes all parts and pieces playing and orienting themselves to serve the customer in that new way. So I think there's a lot that has to happen there. And I know that some of the numbers you and I have discussed have, like they show that those that are leaning in are really finding value, right? Like we're seeing a 35% basket increase for those that are digitally shopping through convenience operators versus those that are just shopping in store. We're seeing a upwards of 1.7% or 1.7 times lift in overall spend for customers at these operators where they're offering omni-channel, and those customers that are shopping omni-channel because they're shopping online and in store, and combined it's just more than they would have spent in a single channel on their own, and they're seeing a lot less churn. And I think this upside, or the upside here, is huge. And when those that lean in and set these platforms up and promote it and start to see some of these results, they're excited because they see their loyal customers start to shift over to omni-channel, and then they see those customers that were loyal now start to shop even more than they were before and spend even more on those trips. And their natural question is, okay, how do we get more of them, right? Like, let's get more of these customers. And I think that's a natural question anybody would ask. And I see that, like, that's what gets everybody excited, is like we see this small group of customers and it's just like they're representing what the potential is. We just have to get more of the industry on board and more supporting the customers, and then that will help grow the base.
Mm-hmm. I think I want to dive into that in just a moment. In what you have just said, it's evident that you have so much data of what's happening in the country across retailers of all sizes, even some of the biggest ones. And I know a lot of that's through your work with NexChapter. Maybe take a moment and share, what is NexChapter? And it's one of the fastest growing firms in the country, but what do you guys do? Who do you help? To maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's an exciting place to be working right now. So NexChapter, really at its core, is a group of retailers that are serving other retailers. So all of us that make up the firm are ex-retailers that come from either convenience or grocery or both, and have actually had the opportunity to sit in positions and execute these programs, build these programs, launch them, optimize them. And that's across many different disciplines within grocery and convenience, whether you're talking about building and standing up loyalty, launching omni-channel commerce with delivery, curbside, developing food service platforms, developing retail media, and working with suppliers, vendors, and CPGs, building out data platforms for consumer data, even learning management and helping develop associates internally, merchandising, you name it. We've got years and years of experience combined as retailers across the org. And within all those disciplines, our goal is to help the retailer, and that can be anywhere from the core strategy and figuring out, okay, how do we enter this new space we're not in today? What should the strategy be? How should we be focusing our efforts, to understanding what that customer journey should look like, understanding what technology we should be using as a retailer, whether that's RFP or RFI process, and then into even launching and understanding how to manage the change that comes with that. And then those retailers that already have things launched may just say, like, look, we've got something going, but we need help accelerating, or we need help optimizing it. So we can come in and add value in all sorts of points along the journey for those retailers.
And for the audience listening, what's the sort of ideal retailer that you'll work with? And if I'm a retailer listening into this, how do I know that I should reach out to NexChapter?
Yeah, it's a great question. We work with a range of retailers. We work with independent operators, both in the convenience and grocery space, all the way up to national players. And again, our experience internally within NexChapter is also representative of that. We have all combined have experience with national retailers in grocery and convenience, and we have experience working with independents and those that are very close with the community. And that's really important because those needs across those different types of organizations vary quite a bit. And having a partner like NexChapter that can understand those nuances and differences will be a difference, and it will make a difference in how well those strategies and plans come to life and can actually help those organizations move the needle.
Hmm. It's really fascinating, Matt, because you probably see the theme of this season is roadmaps, specifically technology roadmaps, and you probably see different types of roadmaps from firms of all sizes. And I'd be remiss to ask, before we dive into sort of the optimal roadmap, what's kind of one observation you've made in 2026 with technology roadmaps across the country? What are folks working on as they enter the year?
I think what everybody is saying they're working on, and they may be working on it, but more at a surface level, is of course artificial intelligence, and within the space I focus on specifically, agentic commerce, and how digital shopping channels are now crossing over into AI agents and allowing customers to use those to shop on their behalf. And I'm seeing just a lot of noise and activity there. I think there is going to be a huge opportunity with that in the future. However, I don't. I think that we need to be careful to not get distracted by the new shiny object, and make sure we are, in fact, focusing on the foundation of what makes our operations work. I think that's a core thing. If you're building a new agentic commerce layer on top of your data that may not be optimized or organized correctly or is not complete, or you're building on top of an operation that has holes in its processes, or within a front end experience that is not ready to serve an agentic shopper, or is just not ready to serve your core shopper, you have to prioritize what is going to drive the needle the most for your core shopper. Not many of the shoppers are yet using agentic. So I think what I'm seeing roadmap wise is a lot of people focusing on that, and seeing some of the bigger players working on that, seeing a lot of people saying they're working on it and trying to hurry up and figure out, okay, what can we do in agentic to keep up? When really that may be a distraction. I think the core thing, or the key thing, is to double down on your core and make sure that your operations at the fundamental level are solid.
I completely agree. Before running, you have to walk. And, uh, today, most shoppers are realistically not shopping on the Chat GPTs and Claudes of the world. They're on DoorDash, they're on Uber Eats, they're searching direct on Google Maps. And so we see omnichannel as a big opportunity with retailers thinking critically about how do they serve their customers, not just in the four walls, but on the internet. And I'd love to ask, sort of getting a little bit deeper, as you think about omnichannel and the optimal roadmap for omnichannel. How should one be thinking about omnichannel? Maybe you might start by defining, how do you think about omnichannel? And for folks listening in, how do you build an omnichannel roadmap? Maybe what are the fundamentals for something like that?
Sure. Um, we have a few different ways that we look at building the roadmap for supporting omnichannel, and figuring out what are the right levers for you to pull. And again, that depends on what type of retailer you are, where you are on your journey. But I think if you kind of step back before we get into kind of those specific areas of focus, um, it is important to define what it is and who we're trying to go after. The omni-channel definition, the way I see it, is building an experience for your customer that is seamless across any way in which they interact with you, which I know sounds like a bunch of buzzwords, but really, when the customer is thinking about purchasing something from a retailer, whether it's a convenience store or a grocer or any other retailer, any other vertical in retail, they're not thinking like, oh, I'm going to shop this retailer specifically through their own app and through curbside, or I'm going to shop this retailer specifically through a marketplace, or I'm going to go shop this retailer in store and I'm going to use their app for loyalty while I'm in the store. They just think I'm going to go shop this retailer, and my expectation is however I want to do it, whatever time of day, it's going to be a seamless experience. It's going to be the same login I use on this app as I use over here that I use in the store. I'm going to see the same products available on all these different channels. I'm going to see the same prices. Or if I don't, it's going to be explicitly explained to me why I'm not seeing the same prices. I'm going to see the same level of quality in whatever products I'm getting on all of these different channels. So omni-channel just means the customer is able to shop with you in whatever way they want and have the same expectations. And I think that is really important for the retailers to be thinking about as they set up these different channels. We think about the channels very differently because we're the ones operating and orchestrating them, but that's not how the customer thinks about it. And I think that's really important. And when I mentioned earlier, like when we talk about what kind of customers are we going after, we're really serving most all customers. Because when you think about omni-channel, you're serving a customer no matter what channel. So that includes in-store. We're not just talking about curbside and delivery. And that may be serving an in-store customer with your app while they're in the store, or that may be serving that same customer on your website before they go to the store. They may be doing some pre-planning. They want to see if something's in stock or what price it is, if it's on sale, is it available at this location for this versus this location? Is there a digital coupon available? There's plenty of ways they can pre-shop. So the digital experience affects almost all customers now, even if they're going to the store. But really where the gold mine is when I talked earlier about those loyal customers you have that then switch to omni-channel when you have those channels available and they start shopping more and spending more on those visits. And the leadership then starts to ask, okay, well, how do we get more of these? And the core customers you're really going after with a really well-built omni-channel platform is figuring out how you can take your existing base of customers and convert those that maybe aren't omni-channel yet into omni-channel customers. So you can start reaping some of those added value benefits as they shop across more channels. And then also the other group of customers you're going after with your omni-channel platform are customers you may not even have at all yet, right? You're trying to acquire net new customers into your funnel or those that are omni-channel oriented into your funnel with your new platform. Neither are easy to do, and they both require different approaches, but they do have some commonalities, which I think kind of inform those fundamentals that we think about when we start to think about what the roadmap looks like for omni-channel. Some of the core things I think that have to be thought about at the very beginning and are a must are the digital experience is non-negotiable and it has to be acceptable, right? Like you'd think I'd say you have to have a great digital experience. It's nice if you do, but it has to at least work. A customer will prefer a digital experience that is quick, allows them to find items fast, allows them to check out easily over a digital experience that looks really pretty. You should try to make your experience look really good. I know UX people are going to be mad at me for saying that. You don't want to purposefully have a not good looking experience, but you have to make sure it works, right? Like if you are prioritizing just the marketing and the look and feel over it over the core operation, you're going to lose customers before they can even place the order. The second is the execution must meet the basics. And that is really what happens to the order, the omni-channel order for curbside or delivery or ship to home once it's placed. And the customer, the basic expectation for them is it's going to be ready on time and it's going to have the stuff I said I wanted included in the order. And if it doesn't, I at least should know about it before I pick the order up. Again, sounds like basic stuff, but those are common things that are missed often. And then the third thing is the trial incentive must be significant. Because when I talked about those two groups of customers, one is your existing customer that doesn't shop the additional omni-channel platforms. They're only an in-store shopper. You have to have some kind of incentive that's going to encourage them to take the leap to try curbside pickup or home delivery. And then, of course, for those customers you don't have at all, the incentive must be significant as well to get them to try you as an entirely new retailer. And by the way, those are in order. You can't start with the incentive to bring a customer in if you don't have your platform in an acceptable manner and you don't have the basics ready for execution, because then you're certainly not going to get that customer to come back again, and it's going to be even harder to pull them back in later. So I think those are like the three basic things. They sound easy and simple, but they are often gotten wrong, and that can lead to a really bad start when somebody's trying to stand up a platform. So I think thinking about those three things then helps inform a lot of the pillars we're going to talk about when it comes to building out your omnichannel roadmap.
Mm-hmm. I just double clicking on the incentive. Like when you say significant incentive, what are some examples? What have you seen work?
I mean, the common one you see that's kind of table stakes is just when you or when you set up a new platform, you offer a customer, a waived pick fee or processing fee or the fee to actually facilitate the order. So that could be, no picking fee for curbside pickup order or takeout order, or it could be a waived delivery charge fee. So the customer's not having to pay for the service. But if they're thinking about like, hey, I might run out and buy these items anyway, I might drive the store myself, that may not be enough of an incentive to just waive that fee. So I think you have to include some sort of discount on the products they're going to get anyway. And whether that's a percent off basket, $1 off basket, if they hit some kind of threshold, like within grocery, we would often target $100 order, you get $10 off, to kind of try to drive that and stretch that basket up, especially for those first time users. And then there's other ways you can approach it as well. Many of our CPG partners out there are very excited about reaching these digital customers early through the digital channels, and are often willing to help offset some of these promotions as well, that you can help lean into to reduce a bit of the burden off the P&L directly and get that funded by a CPG. So there's a few different ways you can approach it, but it needs to be more than just a waived pick fee or a waived delivery fee. There has to be something else to drive that customer to make the switch and take the leap to try the new shopping channel.
Yeah, I fully agree. I know a lot of our customer base continues to experiment with their incentive that they provide, and they've actually segmented those incentives based on, is it a new customer versus returning customer versus even more specialized segments like, is this a super spender, etc. But there's a lot you can do there, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You'd mentioned the pillars, Matt. I'd love to learn a little bit more about, as viewers maybe think about some of the foundations or pillars of omnichannel. Maybe quickly walk us through what they are. How should folks think about omnichannel in 2026?
Sure. So I'll rattle the pillars off here kind of collectively and then double click into each of them. So the way that we look at it is, the first pillar is your strategy and program design, which is the core and kind of the beginning of the process and building out what your roadmap looks like, and informs a lot of the other pillars. So it's understanding who your customers are, what your markets look like, who your competitors are, how you decide you want to deploy these channels. The second piece being technology selection, so the actual tools you're going to use to bring these programs to life. The third, looking at your consumer adoption in the way that you're going to be promoting and marketing the program. The fourth being digital shelf and content, how you're going to merchandise those products that you sell on these platforms. The fifth being fulfillment and operations, what happens to these orders after they're placed. And then the sixth, which sort of underlines those other five pillars, is performance and measurement, and understanding how all of these things are working together, and how the omnichannel platform is collectively supporting the overall business, and how it's driving, at the end of the day, the P&L forward. So that's how we think about these six pieces and how they fit together.
To your point, I mean, there's just like so much to think about, even program design. I think just reflecting on conversations we've had with retailers, there's so much diversity and strategy around, should we be turning on every single store? How do we identify which stores are a good fit? our approach here at Lula is we'll sort of do that analysis for you to kind of take that off your plate. But what we've learned is the answer is no. You should not be turning on every single store, especially if you have 3 stores on a street and want to avoid things like cannibalism across multiple stores on the same street. But I'd be curious, Matt, what are of the pillars, maybe which pillar do you tend to over-index on as you're talking to retailers about building their omnichannel roadmap, and maybe some strategies you might share?
So I tend to over-index on the it's kind of like trying to pick your favorite child. They're all important and special in their own way. But I think the digital shelf and content management on the platforms, as well as the fulfillment and operations, are two that I tend to lean into more. And that's not necessarily because they're more important than the other four. That's because the retailers tend to spend the least amount of time there, value them a bit more. And I don't know, maybe it's saying valuing them is less is not correct. Maybe it's more like they think they've got it, right? Like they don't need to spend time there because they're already solid in those areas. And I tend to find that's where often things get tripped up. So I tend to lean in there because I'm trying to compensate for often the retailers not spending enough time there. And the reason I say that is because the digital shelf piece is so critical for the initial consumer experience as well as the ongoing retention of that consumer. They are going to your platforms to find answers to questions they have and they want to figure it out quickly. And that usually is, do you carry what I'm looking for? Do you have what I want in stock? How quickly can I get it, etc. So if you're not very purposeful, careful, and current with your data on your websites, it can be quite a hindrance. And for all the data that many convenience and grocery operators have about their products, many thousands of products, it's a lot of it's not good, and it takes some very deliberate and specific work that is kind of pain in the butt sometimes, to go out and clean up and make sure the data is actually oriented and shifted in a manner that's digital ready. You got to think about the fact that as a operator that's running a store, you go in and maybe one of the first things you do in the morning is walk your store, make sure everything's looking good, things are faced, things are in stock, there's no messes. You are pulling down signs that are expired and putting up the most relevant signs, making sure the right promotions are highlighted, etc. That all has to be done on the website too, and just as frequently. You need to be walking the aisles of your website to make sure that it is as engaging as possible for customers. So that's super critical, and I think something that can be overlooked, and honestly something that you have to plan for, to make sure that somebody owns it, isn't paying attention to that frequently. The other piece around fulfillment and operations, again, operations is one of the core pieces of being a grocer or convenience operator. Is you've got your people in the stores making the business work, right? That's one of the things that we do really well. Again, this is similar, but it's different. When you start to bring your business to life digitally, you've got to start to react to some of these channels and customer expectations differently as well. And one of the most common negative impacts when it comes to customers trying to shop with you digitally and placing a pickup order or a delivery order is the order being wrong when they receive it, or the order being late, or God forbid, the order not being prepared at all. And again, those things can happen a lot more frequently than you'd expect. And it's a simpler solution than you'd expect as well. It's just making sure there is clear ownership and expectations set with those associates in the store that comes along with the right training and development, et cetera. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, do they know where to be looking when a new order comes in? That is one of the most common things that trip people up, is making sure that there's an awareness that, like, hey, you need to be paying attention to this system or this tablet frequently, because this is where the orders come in. And you have to think about the customers that are placing these orders like they're standing in your store, right? We can't ignore them. They're expecting this to be ready in 2 hours or whatever it is. So that is huge. And a lot of times that just comes down to, hey, you need to plan for this, and you need to plan for probably a little more labor in the store than you think you need. It's better to start with a bit more fat in that labor planning number to run these programs to begin with, to make sure you're understanding your specific and unique operations. You're prepared to handle those discrepancies that come through, and you're really getting your associates very well trained and into a well-oiled machine before you then start to optimize and cut back some of that labor and see how much more you can do with less. Starting off from that standpoint is very difficult, and you end up getting into those situations where you let the customers down, and you really don't want to do that. So again, I love all 6 of these pillars, but those are the 2 I end up focusing on more because they just get missed and under focused on by the retailer.
Yeah, the fulfillment one is important, and I empathize with that a lot, because a lot of the operational issues we see in the store are sometimes uh, uh, accidental. Sometimes someone will unplug the device where the orders are coming in and charge their phone, and then the next thing you know, the device shuts off a couple hours later, and you have a driver that walks in and says, "Hey, you have this order ready," and cashier says, "What order?" And so,
Right.
we've luckily we've solved that for a lot of our retailers, but we've noticed a lot of these operational issues are preventable, and more importantly, they're unintentional. No one is trying to build a bad experience for the end customer. But great insight, MVG. I really appreciate how you've sort of broken out omnichannel execution into these 6 pointers, and we could talk about these for hours. But I know we're coming to the end of this episode, but there's one important thing I want to end with, which is lightning round. And we're going to ask a couple questions, some easy, some harder, and curious to see what you say. You ready?
I am. Now I'm starting to regret agreeing to this lightning round, but let's do it.
All right, so we'll start with some easy ones. What's your favorite convenience store food whenever you go to one?
It's been the same since I was a little kid, and I'm actually a sucker for the ultra processed nacho cheese that comes out of the thing you push the button for and just dumps it into the tray and the chips. Um, I will still get that from time to time. That is a yummy treat.
You know what they say, cheddar makes everything better. So love that.
Exactly.
What's a retailer that really punches above their weight from a tech standpoint?
That's a good question. I think, from a tech standpoint is difficult because a lot of times we think about like those in the industry, those as retailers, those as providers, we think about the tech first. And when you ask that question, I kind of just immediately thought of who's a retailer that punches above their weight in terms of providing a seamless experience, which falls onto that tech. And for me, it's not a convenience example, but it's in grocery, and one that I think is a really really strong operator when it comes to omni-channel commerce is Lowe's Foods. They're a regional operator on the east side of the country, and they've built up a really strong presence and a really strong following among their customers because they put all that effort into solving a lot of the things we talked about earlier. And I know some of the folks there, and they've got a really strong platform, but I also know that it's not 100% perfect in terms of the way the tech all works together, and they make sure they're prioritizing picking the right partners that are also willing to go all in on them to make the tech work and to make some of the connections work that may not come out of the box. And then internally, they're also all in on putting the resources behind making it work so that customer experience continues to be good and they can keep that lead that they have against the national players, which I think is so important. So I think they're a really good example, and plus they just have a really really fun store. If you've ever got the chance or ever get the chance to go into one, check it out. You might be able to see a thing they call the chicken dance when they bring out fresh rotisserie chickens in front of the customers. They do it every time, and that's just
Wow.
one example of a fun thing they do. But Yeah, I think
Love
that they're a really good example of somebody that gets it right with the tech and the experience.
that. That is awesome. Um, what's one KPI that anyone who's building an omnichannel experience should have top of mind in 2026?
One KPI. I think the most important thing for the retailers to be looking at is I mean, you can look at this in a couple different ways, but basically just retention. And I think that can be subdivided into a couple different groups of like how well are you retaining your first time customers, which is very telling of what your experience is for those people that aren't familiar with your platforms. But then, what is your retention of your long term customers? And if
Mhm.
you see either of those things dropping or underperforming, they're kind of red flags in different parts of what your value proposition is.
Mhm.
And if you're losing first time customers, that means okay, you've got to step up your experience. Either you're not executing operationally, or you're not providing the right front end experience to even get them to place the order in the first place or to come back. But if you're losing long term customers, that means you're starting to get edged out from a value standpoint. And are you pulling the right levers to keep somebody loyal to what you're offering? Are you providing the right incentives to keep people coming back? So that retention number is so critical.
What's retention is important, and I'm curious. This sort of connects to the next and final question. What's one action item that any audience member here can sort of take following listening to this podcast to kind of kick off 2026 strong?
I think it goes back to what we talked about with the significant incentive. We talked about those groups you're trying to go after, right? Is one, your customers that you already have shopping with you, but maybe just are in store and you want to get them across multiple channels and turn them into omni-channel customers. And then those customers aren't shopping with you at all that you're trying to pull in. Um, Everybody's trying to do that right now. Everybody's trying to pull those new customers in, increase foot traffic and the equivalent of that digitally, and get new additional site visitors and turn those into converted customers and orders. So everybody's trying to do it. If you don't have a significant incentive that stands out to pull that customer in, you're going to have a hard time doing it. You can't rely on just having a great experience on its own. That will help, but you need to give somebody a good reason to click on your ad or to search you in Google, or when they're in the store to see your app and download it and sign up. You got to give them a good reason to do that. So leaning in hard and over investing in those incentives is critical.
That's important. Awesome. Well, Matt, it was so wonderful having you on this episode and diving. We could talk about this stuff for hours, and I look forward to our next catch up where we actually do dive into some of this more. So thank you for the knowledge you've just shared. And Matt, I'll hand it off to you to bring us home.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you, Matt, for being here. We knew this would be a really great conversation with a lot of actionable takeaways for our listeners, and you certainly did not disappoint. We've enjoyed partnering with you and the NexChapter team over the years. So thanks again for making the time to join us on the episode today. If you're listening now, stay tuned. We've got a really exciting episode 3 dropping in just a few short weeks. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. And we'll see you on the next one.